everybody? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS core picks for this week's Rocket Mortgage Classic. We'll be going over 6 of my top plays for GPP contests, price $7,500 and above on Draftkings, and I'll be building around in my lineups in a core fashion. They'll be foundational pieces of my player pool. As per usual, these plays could change throughout the week, so that's why it's important to stay tuned throughout all the video content throughout the week. Also my Patreon, where I'm constantly updating down there. But based on the modeling process, and even if these players end up being a little bit chalky, I'll probably still have some shares myself just because they project so well this week. Last week was a complete shit show. So last week, really not something I want to look back on too much, but guys like Davis Riley, Adam Svensson ended up trunk slamming, and it was to be expected, right? A windy golf course, also water in play on 15 holes, and when that's the case, that is a recipe for quite a few ejections, and that's what we saw. It wasn't just those two. You had chalky plays like Brendan Steele who missed the cut, obviously Hideki Matsuyama up top, also a few other chalky plays in that 15 to 20% range ended up trunk slamming, so as a result, low 6 of 6 percentage overall, and was able to squeak through 16 6 of 6s myself, so it wasn't really the worst week in history, but still some big misses with the Svensson and Riley that I played in 40, maybe even 50% of my lineups in some cases. I had plenty of Hideki too, who I didn't talk up on the channel, so if you had an off week last week, don't be alarmed. A lot of that was due to the water and the volatility out there. But here at the Rocket Mortgage Classic, only one water hazard. And last year, only 8 100ths of a penalty stroke per round for the field. So if the volatility last week really irked you, this week should definitely be something that is a little bit more comfortable for you. So I'm looking forward to it. Let's go ahead and get this thing rocking with our top 6 core picks for the Rocket Mortgage. Alrighty, I've got my projections on the screen, and we'll go ahead and start this off at the top of the board. We've got Patrick Cantley at $10,700. And for me, Cantley really checks the 2 boxes I'm looking for the most, which is first off, somebody up top who is coming in with form, and of course, Patrick Cantley, number 4 in recent form ranking, but more importantly, has the finishes at top tier events to boot. Those include a top 10 at the Open Championship, which frankly was his first ever real showing at a major championship, the first time he's really shown up. Top 4 finish at the Scottish Open, a couple top 15s at the Travelers and US Open, obviously finished 3rd at the Memorial, a golf tournament he's had a ton of success at for his career. So really grooving at this point, right? His floor is a 13th or a 14th place finish at the US Open and really is trending in the direction I'm looking for. And on top of that, the next box I'm really looking to check up top is either elite off the tee play or elite putting. And he checks the elite putting box. And for the last 2 to 3 months, that wasn't really something we could say about Cantley. He was in a drought with the putter, was not making nearly enough putts, and in fact, at one point, was losing close to half a stroke putting per round with the flat stick, which, is unheard of for a Patrick Cantley. But if we take a look at the recent form metrics, you'll see he's back to his usual self, where he's gaining in all 4 categories, but most significantly with the putter, where he's gaining 0.83 shots per round. That's the exact type of shots gained profile I'm looking for with the Patrick Cantley. And even more specifically, right, he doesn't have course history, but he's played well at the Travelers, right? If you take a look at the recent form, you'll see he finished in 13th place there. And that was really where we started to see the putter come around. Before that at the US Open, it was kind of middling. And even at Memorial, a golf course where he loves the green complexes there, he wasn't really an elite level putter. Now, I like the way that the putter's been trending. The shots gained metrics definitely back that up. In terms of total model ranking, you see he's number 3. A lot of that is carried by the recent form ranking, but even with his longer term form, you'll see that a lot of it holds up. He's gaining across the board, most significantly off the tee and with the putter, which was the same thing that we saw with the last 24 measured rounds. And the approach play, though it hasn't been elite of late, you can see gaining close to a quarter of a stroke per round, pretty much what sample size you look at. The field hit 75% of greens last year. Really, this isn't a ball striking type of golf course. I mean, you got to look at approach play every single week on the PGA Tour, but this isn't a golf course where you have to gain 7 to 8 strokes to the field to win. I mean, realistically, Cantley could go out there and gain those 7 to 8 strokes with the putter, gain something like 3 to 4 strokes in approach, just very reasonable numbers in that category, and get on by. So I like him there at $10,700. I do think that he will be if not the chalkiest player on the slate, up there in the top 3 to 4 highest owned players, which obviously is hard to stomach, particularly if you're playing in 150 max or in one of those large field GPPs. But if you're playing in single entries, a smaller field contest, I really think that starting lineups with him is going to make a lot of sense. Next up, you've got Cameron Young at $10,100. And in terms of recent form, you're not going to find a hotter player. I mean, the recent form metrics, particularly off the tee, are on another level. And this week, I'm really looking for one of two things. That is elite off the tee play and somebody that's explosive with their birdie or better percentage. If you watch my course breakdown, I really break down the two avenues to success here, which is kind of like the Kevin Kisner method, where you're going out there hitting fairways, leaning into your wedge play and making putts, or the Bryson DeChambeau method, or what we saw last year with Cameron Davis, which is be an explosive off the tee player and capitalize on an aggressive high birdie or better percentage type of approach. Cameron Young fits that type of build, and that's what we've seen win 2 of the 3 iterations of this event. So Cam Young at $10,100, I do think that he has a legit chance to actually win this week, let alone be somebody who finishes top 5 and is relevant in DFS. So in terms of the approach play, it's been more than adequate. Obviously at the Open Championship, was able to go out there and set up a ton of birdie opportunities, was top 3 in the field in birdies made, but more importantly than anything for Cameron Young, he showed an ability to hit wedges there, which, at St. George's with the firm and fast conditions that they were playing in, they were hitting drives 350, sometimes over 400 yards. Cameron Young at one point hit over a 420-yard drive. And, with those type of conditions there, he was hitting 70 to 100-yard wedge shots in almost every single hole. And if you saw my course breakdown, you'll know that 75 to 100, also that 100 to 125-yard range are going to be extremely overutilized. And if there's another category that you need to be good at, it's 250-plus yard approaches. What is Cameron Young good at? Oh, all 3 of those categories. In fact, he's top 10 in the field in all 3 of those categories. And you may say a lot of people hate proximity stats, right? They're extremely volatile. I'd argue in small sample sizes, sure, but when we've had 15 to 20 starts or somebody like a Cameron Young, and he's been consistently at the top of that category for the entire year, I'd argue there's a lot more merit to it, right? If we were 5 weeks in, I would certainly agree with you. But towards the end of the season, I really start to put a lot more credence into those stats, right? We have 2 weeks left of the PGA Tour schedule, right? If we're ever going to use those type of stats, it would certainly be at this point. So at $10,100, I like the off the tee play. I think he fits that Bryson DeChambeau mold. And of the late, putter hasn't really been there, and really it hasn't mattered all that much, right? He's still number 2 in the field in recent form ranking. You'll look at some of the results here. Top 2 finish at the Open, a little bit volatile, right? Missed the cut at the Scottish, which really didn't surprise me. I think the Slinks style doesn't really suit him, but obviously at St. Andrews, he was able to overcome that. Missed cut at the U.S. Open, but he gets a 3rd place at the PGA, made the cut at the Memorial. Just, imagine if he brings a putter to the table. Right, last week was able to gain last start was able to gain over 4 strokes with the flat stick. Imagine he goes out there and breaks a slate with the flat stick, right? Gains 6 or 7 strokes. He's done that before on the PGA Tour before. These ball striking stats, that's an easy win, particularly at a golf course like this. So Cameron Young at $10,100. I definitely have him on my outright betting card. I've already gotten him at 20 to 1. Somebody I'm going to likely play in bunches in DFS as well. Next up, we've got Adam Scott at $9,300. And for me, Adam Scott checks more of the plotter build, which, might seem a little bit foreign, particularly when you consider how explosive a ball striker he was just 5 or 10 years ago. But at this stage of his career, he is no longer the longest on tour, right? He can still get it out there, particularly when he unleashes at it with full force. He can get it 320, 325 yards through the air. But at this golf course, I'd expect him to be a little bit more calculated, perhaps even hit a lot of 3-woods around Detroit Golf Club, because what he does best, even at this age, I should say maybe even especially at this age, is hit those wedges better than pretty much anybody else. If you take a look at his proximity stats for his career, not even just for this year or the last 2 to 3 years, he's almost consistently been top 10 in the 75 to 100 and the 100 to 125 yard category. Both of those would be quote unquote feel wedge range, where likely you're going to be either in between wedges or trying to put something out there and saute it. He's been one of the best players frankly, all time at doing that. Last week at the Open Championship, you saw that on display. After a really rough start, he was 4 over par through the first 5 or 6 holes. He ended up getting into contention by Sunday, let alone somebody who, was out there making a cut, posting a top 25. Most of us would feel pretty good about that from Adam Scott. We played him at DFS. He went out there and almost won the damn thing. So, I think a lot of that's going under the radar. On Sunday, kind of folded towards the end. So, the finish doesn't look nearly as good as it actually was in perpetuity because, a 15th place finish, he was realistically had a chance to win that golf tournament on Sunday. Especially after the start that he had. So a 15th place finish, maybe that gets a little bit overlooked. The shots gained metrics looked great, especially the stats with the wedges out there. He was hitting a lot to 5 to 6 feet. In terms of the recent form, it hasn't been amazing. You'll see he's a gainer in 2 out of the 4 categories, a slight loser off the tee, which we can deal with. Around the green has also been a loser, but if there's one stat I almost just don't care about at all this week, it would be shots gained around the green. This is a golf course, a Donna Ross design, where sure you have a lot of runoff areas, chipping hollows to the left and to the right of most greens here, but they aren't difficult chip shots. Because they're running off, you're usually chipping up into a slope, at least if you don't miss wildly, that sort of thing. Even if you miss short, which is definitely the best miss to have around a Donna Ross design, you're chipping uphill the entire way. So around the green play, usually something that I just don't factor too much at these designs, because I can tell you from experience as playing these golf courses, that's not all that difficult to get up and down. If a hack like me can go out there and get it done half the time, right? These PGA Tour pros should be able to get it done just about 9 out of 10 times. Moving down a little bit further, actually before we do so, I'll remind you about my Patreon page. If you are looking for access to all of my projections, all of my plays for this week, not just the ones that I'm talking up on the video, that is exactly where to find it. All of the stuff that is blacked out is on my Patreon page. A link is down in the description of the video. It is $10 for the month and by far the best value you're going to find on all of YouTube, all of the fantasy side for golf. It's obviously for DraftKings. I do prize picks content too, spreadsheets with my hit rates for props I'm going after. I'll do live betting props for prize picks I'm posting on there. And in the future, looking to add an optimizer, which may be an extra charge. We'll have to see about that, but a lot to come on that side. So a Discord server you get access to when you join too. For the community, there's just a lot of bright minds down in there. You can bounce ideas off that chat, bounce ideas off of me. It's just a great tool to have, a great community to be a part of. And I would implore you all to go ahead and check it out. But plug aside, let's go ahead and continue with the video where we're going to talk about Davis Riley here at $8,600, who is everybody's least favorite golfer right now. Obviously, last week burned a lot of people. He was, 36% owned in some contests. I ended up having 32% myself, which is actually lower than the field, at least in the large field GPP contest. But I did have plenty of exposure from the cash side, also on the GPP single entry side. So ended up raising my exposure on that end, at least monetarily, to much higher than 36% for the week. So I'm one of the people who should be extremely agitated with him. And don't get me wrong, I am. But that makes him a perfect buyback spot, right? People love to fade the guys that screwed them the week before. They just can't click that name after knowing that they missed the cut at super high ownership there. They expect that to continue with Davis Riley. And just time and time again, especially in the past, we've seen these guys bounce back. And for Davis Riley, even with, just missing the cut on the number, right? So it wasn't like it was really all that bad to begin with. He's still insanely strong with the shots gained metrics. Really, the one category he's starting to lag behind in is the putting, and we'll go ahead and talk about that at the end. But let's talk about the things that have retained, right? Shots gained off the tee wasn't his best week. He had a few water balls, so the off the tee numbers were definitely skewed downwards because of that, but still gaining a third of a stroke per round. So despite that, still one of the better players in the 8K range in the off the tee play. But most importantly, one of the best players in the world in shots gained off the, on approach. And that is despite not having his best week. Also hit a few water shots on par threes, which you don't expect from Davis Riley, but they got a few bad bounces. And that's exactly what they were, because we saw them on the ESPN Plus coverage. One of them was on a par three, could have easily been to 10 to 15 feet on the fringe, ended up rolling off the other side and going in the water. Just sometimes that's how golf works. And unfortunately, that was the difference between him making the cut in missing the cut last weekend, right? Sometimes that's just how golf works. Sometimes when skies are super chalky, it's probably better just to fade them at 36% ownership, right? But hindsight's 20/20, right? We wish we knew that was going to happen before. In either circumstance, though, right, Ball striking stats look great. Off the tee play, approach play is still there. Let's talk about the putting. The putting went from a huge positive before last week to now just a hardly above neutral. He could not make a damn thing, whether it was from 5 feet, 8 feet, whether it was from 20 to 25 feet. He couldn't get a putt to drop for his life, and you could see it start to weigh on him, particularly there on Friday's round, right around hole 7 to 8. Every time he missed, head was down, head was shaking, and he pretty much knew a missed cut was coming, and that was even with a huge rebound towards the end. Made a run at the cut, even had a few putts for birdie at the end that could have dropped to get him to the weekend, and though none of them dropped, I mean, you could tell that he was frustrated, that he just wanted to get in the lab and get this thing fixed. He missed the cut, obviously has plenty of time to get the putter fixed, and if he can just get that thing ironed out, I mean, it's the sky's the limit, right? The off the tee play and the approach play wasn't all that bad, like I said, right? He missed the cut on the number. If that's a floor performance from Davis, and really that's what it looked like, then I'm willing to buy back in on the kid, right? He'll be much lower owned than he was last week. He's not going to be nearly as chalky. You know, if you take 32% like I did last week, you're probably getting accurate, or at least nearly adequate leverage to the field. So at $8,600, I think the price tag makes sense. From a course fit perspective, you know, I think it's an okay course fit, right? He's not really a bomber. He's not really somebody who's a plotter either, but has plenty of distance. I think distance is helpful around Detroit Golf Club, but I don't think it's a prerequisite. But most importantly, he can hit the wedges, hit the irons in general pretty much better than everyone else in the field. And that's really what I'm always looking to hunker down on from week to week. All right, next up, we've got ourselves Cebu Kim, who might be a volatile guy to take, and I think that's really putting it lightly. But at a birdie fest like we have here at this golf course, he's somebody who has more than enough firepower to not only crack that top 5, but to also potentially win this thing here at Detroit Golf Club. So at $7,900, if you're looking for a safe play, then run the opposite direction. But if you're looking for somebody with upside who's probably going to be much lower owned than he should be, then you should be all ears for somebody like Cebu. So let's talk through it, right? Let's talk why. First of all, I expect him to be a little bit lower owned than he should be. So of late, you know, he's had decent finishes, right? Like a top 15 at the Open. I'd like to see also a top 15 at the Memorial, but he's also had plenty of downers, right? Miscut at the Scottish, miscut at the Travelers, miscut at the US Open as well. Also, just hardly made the cut at the PGA Championship. So I don't think any of these finishes are really going to move the needle. More importantly, the course history, we take a look at that angle. You'll see that he's played here, but hardly made the cut in 2 years, and also missed the cut in 2019. So with all that being said, not a ton to really look at with Cebu, and even the shots gained metrics, right? You know, for Cebu Kim, he's hardly gaining off the tee, hardly gaining on approach, gaining pretty significantly around the green, which is great, but he's slight marginal loser with the shots gained with the putting. That all gives me a picture of just like, you know, very decent stats, not really anything that's great. And when people are trying to take guys at the top of the 7K range, they're really going to try and hunker down on stats, right? I can imagine guys like Mark Hubbard getting a ton of ownership this week, and even guys like a Webb Simpson, Adam Hadwin, Tringale towards $8,500, even a little bit cheaper. I mean, Ju Young Kim's going to be extremely popular, and even Cameron Champ, who was also extremely effective last week, at least in rounds 2 through 4. I'd expect to get quite a bit of attention here. So at $7,900, maybe he's the odd man out. And, you know, with the firepower that he brings to the table, his aggressive mindset, I think he is more than capable of going out there and being a GPP play that you absolutely have to have. So I like him there at that price tag. His Ben Poa numbers are decent. He's at least a gainer to the field in that category. And we know, you know, we've seen it in the past time and time again. He is more than capable of just flipping the switch, turning it from 0 to 100 from week to week on tour, and going out there and nabbing a win. And lastly here, we're going to have Scott Stallings at $7,700. For me, Scott Stallings isn't going to be a sexy pick, and despite him being one of the best model plays of the week, and I'd expect that to be the case for most people in their process, I don't think he's going to be super chalky, right? It's Scott Stallings, for goodness sake. You know, a few weeks ago when he was in the 8K range, we were dealing with a bare bones field. Sure, he got plenty of attention, and deservingly so. He almost ended up winning that golf tournament, right? I was pretty glad we were on him at like 35% in my player pool. I know a few other people out there weren't so hot on Scott that week, but it didn't work out all that well for them. Let's take a look at the shots gained metrics. He's been hitting it beautifully, and it wasn't just that event, it was going into that event. The shots gained metrics looked great, has continued that over the last few events. He's gaining close to a stroke per round with the approach play. He's gaining off the tee, gaining with the putter like you're used to seeing, and I know it's Scott Stallings, right? Not the highest pedigree player, but of late has been a consistent mofo out there. I mean, look at this, right? 4th place finish, 8th place finish at the Travelers, right? Was able to get on both of those times. A few missed cuts in there. Again, that's Scott Stallings. He's an extremely volatile player, but another top 4 finish. If you're looking for somebody that's going to miss the cut or finish likely in the top 10 to top 15, and this is your guy, and I'm playing in Lordsfield GPPs, I'm looking to take down a 20 to 100,000 entry contest, and he is the exact type of player I'm looking to get to, and he's no longer $8,000. He's $7,700, right? So if we liked him in that type of field, and frankly, this isn't all that much stronger a field, right? I mean, in terms of top-end talent, sure, you have Patrick Cantley here, guys like Cameron Young who are coming in with form, but the 9 and 8K range guys are pretty much the same as when he was in that 8K range with them as well. I mean, we're getting a guy $1,000 cheaper, probably going to be even lower owned than he was there in the 8K range. You know, sign me up, right? He's still coming in with that great form. And again, the one thing I kind of hold against him is the fact that we haven't really seen him of late. Like, we haven't seen him since the John Deere Classic, right? What is that, like nearly a month ago at this point? Which, you know, doesn't seem like all that long, but in golf years, you know, that's a relatively long time to be on the shelf, right? I mean, obviously, a lot of the other picks here had played in the Open Championship, which I like the fact that most of them took the week off the week before, you know, weren't out there last week grinding out there at the 3M Open in some of the windy conditions out there in nearly PGA National type of setup. Guys like Scott Stallings, you know, he's taken some time off. Maybe he's used that to recuperate. He's going to come out there with even better form. That would be the one thing I hold against him. But another thing that really lets me kind of forget about that, I mean, look at him on Bent Poa. For his career, an absolute stud, gaining over half a stroke per round. So just too many things pointing to Scott Stallings having a good week. And like I mentioned, I don't think he's going to be super chalky, right? It's Scott Stallings you're talking about, right? You know, the guys in the 8K range and weak fields are just going to get ownership, and he's here at the top of the 7K range now. So I think he's adequately priced. Hopefully not enough people are on him or are looking at models this week, because pretty much no matter what you spit in there for a Scott Stallings, particularly if you include approach play, pretty much whatsoever, you're going to be getting to him in bunches, and I will certainly be doing so this week as well. Alrighty, that is all I've got for the core picks this week. Before you hop on out of here, make sure to go ahead and smash that like button, and also go ahead and comment down below who you've got winning this week. For me, it's got to be Cam Young. I've got a little bit of a gut feeling about it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody like Cantley or Adam Scott hoist the trophy. But go ahead and let me know down below who you're taking. And as per usual, expect to see some value picks dropping tomorrow morning, some fades and sleepers on Wednesday morning, and our weekly DFS live stream for this week's tournament on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be touching on the weather for this week, also some of my player poll and strategy notes, and most importantly, the best part of the stream, all of your live questions. So make sure to bring all of those with you there on Wednesday, again at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you are subbed to the channel if you haven't already done that too, so you don't miss any of the updates when I'm putting up the content throughout the week, and of course when I'm going live on Wednesday. I appreciate all the support here, guys. Best of luck with all of your lineups this week, and let's get this cash.